We're back, and we are going to talk Apple today. So, we did this a year ago. We had another Apple thing after the iPhone 14 launched.
Mm.
And I know you missed both that event and this one from last week, but um, there are some things to talk about. Last year, I kind of made fun of Apple for doing the whole, um, buy our stuff or die kind of message that they were putting on everyone last year. Last year was all about like safety features and cool things, right? Like what you can do with the Apple Watch and monitoring your heartbeat to satellite access with the iPhone and with the Apple Watch as well. So if you're you know climbing a mountain and break your leg, you can make a satellite call, which is it's cool technology. But the whole theme last year was that kind of you should buy your stuff, and if you don't, you're probably going to die kind of messaging. Uh, but not this year. Not this year. I thought it was going to be the first 5 minutes of their presentation was all about the Apple Watch and how it's had saved people, and I was like, here we go again. But then they switched and they switched real quick. And this year the theme is the environment and carbon neutral was like their their phrase of the year for this presentation. This is, we want to be a net zero climate impact for all of their products, and so they want to be carbon neutral. And so they went on and talked about things like their packaging, and their packaging doesn't have plastics in it. They're talking about their stores running on clean energy, their home office running on clean energy. But more than that, they're making their manufacturing convert to clean energy as well. This is good, and it's also very different from other companies. So like other companies will they'll get like climate credit, things that they can use to, get better tax deals or whatever, right? And so, they'll produce their products out of some dirty manufacturing plant somewhere, but they'll get a climate credit because they go to Paraguay and plant a million trees, right? They spend $1 million or 15 million bucks or 50 million bucks on planting trees somewhere, and they look, hey, and they go, hey, look, we're green. Apple is like, no, that's not enough. We want to clean up our entire operation, which is fine. Um, Somewhere, the pessimist in me is like, I kind of feel like maybe I'm being gaslit here, but but that was the theme. In fact, a note that I put in here is 27 minutes into this presentation, and the only thing that they've talked about product wise is the new S9 chip and the double tap feature for their Apple Watch. Um, Everything else has been dedicated to this, net zero climate impact thing that they're doing. And again, I don't think it's a bad thing. Converting to clean energy, I think, is a good thing. I don't think we want to run on coal power forever, right? If we can somehow convert to solar energy, that's a good thing. I'm not going to say what they're doing is a bad thing, um, but this kind of feeds into what I would call the Apple stagnation when it comes to their innovation. And I was really underwhelmed by what they promoted last year and what they came out with last year with basically every product from last year. So far, it's been fairly underwhelming this year. It's just that they tout their new product as just being the greatest thing ever, but really it's just a small
No, the
improvement
VR seems
over.
pretty cool, but
We'll
it's
get into that. So there are some interesting things. So there's some good and there's some bad. There are some interesting things with their augmented reality thing that they're doing right now.
right.
we'll talk about that when we talk about the camera on the iPhone 15 Pro.
Okay.
Um, but let's get into it. We'll talk some USB C. I'm going to save that for last, though, because I have kind of a hot take on it, and I think it's going to be kind of unpopular opinion on it. But we're going to talk USB C. Um, but let's get into the iPhone. So they unveiled the iPhone 15 as well as the iPhone 15 Pro phones. Um, so basically, what they did with the iPhone 15 is just they took the iPhone 14 Pro and said, "Huh, we need something for next year. We're going to take the iPhone 14 Pro, Dynamic Island, the I think it's the A16 chip, and we're going to call it the iPhone 15." So that's what they did. This is this is your clue, Brandon, for the USB C conversation that we're going to have later. Anyway, so the this year's iPhone 15 is essentially an iPhone 14 Pro, but with a USB C port. It's also they're calling it more efficient, and they're saying they put a bigger battery in it versus the iPhone 14 from last year. As I just mentioned, it has the dynamic island, which I'm
Did
not a
they put a
fan
bigger
of.
battery?
They apparently they did put a bigger battery in it versus the iPhone 14. So I don't know if it's the same battery as the Pro from last year,
Hmm.
but they mentioned in the presentation that the battery is larger and then the chip itself is more efficient. So you get better battery life. You get the dynamic island, plus whatever they're doing with the camera app and whatnot. Um, but when we get to the Pro, they spend a lot of time on talking about the camera, the 48 megapixel camera, the 5 times optical zoom that they're doing. Um, most so I'm not a photographer, but I used to sell cameras, and so I know megapixel is like the big marketing thing that companies will use. You know, the bigger the better. That's not necessarily the case when it comes to megapixels. People are going to be like, oh, 48 megapixels versus 12 megapixels. The 48 must be
Hmm.
better. You can still take a really bad photo with a 48 megapixel camera. So, um, so for any of you Samsung people out there or Android people, you know, you could be like, oh, you know, my phone's had a 48 megapixel camera for years now. It may or may not take better pictures than what Apple is saying that they can do with the
It's
15.
200 on the Ultra.
200. Okay, so 200 on the Ultra. So yeah, if you're going to take a picture of the moon, it's probably still going to be the same, you know, fake AI processed image. Um,
Right.
shot at Samsung there, but um, so megapixel doesn't necessarily mean mega better when it comes to photography. You know, there's a lot more to taking really good pictures. You know, things like aperture and the back end processing too. It makes a big difference. So, you know, we saw Google back in the day take pretty bad cameras and make really good photos out of them because of how they're able to process it in the photo app. So, um, but it's probably better than last year's camera. Uh, to me, it's just, hey, look, we're doing this thing and it's better. Please give us $1,200 for this phone, and that was pretty underwhelming. Now, on to continue with the camera, um, the uh, they're doing what's called spatial video with it, which is basically you can create a 3D video, and when you pair 3D video with their Apple Vision, what you get is essentially a 3D image. So we were talking about augmented reality. And so that's kind of a really neat idea. Is they're taking
Hmm.
two cameras on the phone to essentially create depth, like the human eyes do, to create a 3D image. And when you pair that with Apple Vision, um,
Hmm.
you get a really cool looking 3D image out of it. And so that's really interesting, especially if you're talking, trying to operate like a robot or something, and you're getting a 3D image back to try to get something like an arm to twist a bolt or something like that. Um, so that's really interesting. That's
Yeah,
pretty
that's really
cool.
cool. But I don't know if you're going for the elephant in the room later, but i the VR or the AR,
Hmm.
what does that cost? So
It's a
it's
lot of money.
yeah. So if you're buying that
Yeah.
and the new phone, I mean,
Right. Yeah. I mean, you could spend, right on the low end, what $3,000 or so, 2,500 or $3,000 for a 15 Pro plus an Apple Vision. Yeah, it's
yeah,
expensive. And again, I don't know who, as far as why would a regular consumer at this point buy something like that? And so
right.
I'm not here today. We're recording this on the 18th of September 2023. Today, like, I don't see a practical reason to spend that kind of money on something like this. However, for the future, what this kind of technology could lead to, that's kind of exciting. I would say
Yeah,
that's really exciting. And I'm kind of thinking for, and again, I'm trying to think for regular consumer because I can see, the technology in a technology space, right? For someone who needs to operate like a drone or something like that, or a robot to do some sort of work somewhere. I could see the practical use for something like this, but on a consumer level, I'm trying to think of how I would use something like this and how would it be cool. And I'm thinking like in the future, if I'm away from my kids on like their birthday, but I want to see them open their presents, it'd be really cool to put on an Apple Vision, right? And be able
all sorts of
to,
sci-fi movies are coming to mind.
right? But to put on an Apple Vision and look through the lens, and on the other side would be my wife taking a video of my kids potentially opening up a birthday present, and I could see a 3D image of them doing that. And so, yeah, exactly. There's a lot of sci-fi movies and images that are coming to my brain right now. But potentially that's on the horizon and coming soon, right? And so, we'll see what this technology costs 10 years from now, and whether or not it's actually a practical investment, right? If you get to get into something like this for $500 versus $3,000, it's pretty
Yeah,
interesting.
Ready Player One, here we
So,
come at that point.
right, yeah, which I think would be awesome in a lot of ways.
Well,
Um,
it would be
you
awesome.
know, it'd be
I don't know.
awesome without like the bandwidth wars
Yeah,
and the
right.
stacks
The
and
stacks, yeah.
the stacks and everybody is living in the oasis instead of interacting with people live,
Yeah, John's like,
right?
please don't quote me. The stacks would be awesome.
But anyway, to continue on, so the 15 Pro, it's got the new A17 Pro chip, which is their first 3 nanometer chip. It's a 6 core processor, 4 efficiency cores, 2 performance cores. Um, what is interesting about this chip is it's introducing ray tracing,
Mm,
which for people in gaming know exactly what I'm talking about with ray tracing, and um, that's kind of how images are processed to show things in shadows or light bouncing off of reflecting off of different surfaces. Um, but to go with the ray tracing, they're also talking about getting full fledged AAA games being able to be played on the iPhone 15 Pro. And so I think I wrote down which games that they were talking about. I know Assassin's Creed was one of it. I think Resident Evil is another. But the next Assassin's Creed is coming, and you can play it the full game, from what I'm being told and understanding. This is the full game, not a mobile version of the game like Call of Duty Mobile or whatever. I'm talking full on Assassin's Creed being played on an iPhone 15 Pro. Why someone would do that, I don't know. But the fact that this phone technology has gotten to the point where it's playing a massive game like that is pretty telling. And it'll be really interesting on not the Apple side, but on the gaming PC side, which you and I have gaming PCs, and we have graphics cards that can do ray tracing, and these graphics cards can be up to $2,000 just for the graphics card itself. We get these to play these games, and a $1,200 phone can now play this. So we'll see what gaming is, or the gaming PC community is going to look like in 5 or 10 years from now. If Apple can introduce ray tracing technology into their phone, it sounds like Nintendo's doing the same thing with the Switch 2. And so we're seeing mobile devices being able to do what giant computers can do. So it is interesting. So um, I don't know what else ray tracing really brings to the iPhone 15. Um, it's definitely not a reason to buy it, in my opinion. I don't know, if the difference between buying the 15 versus the 15 Pros because it has ray tracing. I would question why anyone would need ray tracing on their phone right now. Um,
Well, this is
but
coming
it's
from two guys who are
who are
what
gamers,
I guess
and right, and in my gaming computer that you can see right over my shoulder, that's got an RTX in it, and it's an RTX 4080 in it, and
to,
it's
to be
it's
fair, we
cool.
favor PC gaming. I don't
Yeah,
know if maybe there is mobile some mobile gaming community that is looking forward to this. So I don't know.
I yeah, I don't know. It's so the technology is it's really really um, aggressive technology when it comes to resource usage. I would consider retracing still in its infancy, in a lot of ways, and so if you're playing a game like Cyberpunk's the real big ray tracing game that's out there right now, and if you want to be able to run that game with full on ray tracing in it, you need a heck of a computer. I mean, we're talking $2,000 computer to be able to run that really well. You can probably spend $1,500 and be able to do, some light ray tracing in it. But if you want full blown ray tracing, you're talking about $2,000 or $2,500 being spent on a computer to be able to do that. But more and more games are going to be incorporating it. It's just interesting that to see, mobile computing to start getting into that, and the PlayStation and the Xbox, I believe they have RDNA 2 architecture, which I believe does support some ray tracing, but it's not good. um, but anyway, it'll be interesting to see, especially because if Apple is introducing this in their iPhone, of course it's going to be in the next um, version of their computers as well. So the MacBooks, Mac Mini, when the M3 launches, I'm sure it's going to have ray tracing in it. This is all Apple Silicon processing, right? And so those processors were originally based on the iPhone processors. So, ray tracing is going to be a thing that they're bringing to Mac, and it'll be really interesting to see Mac maybe take an aggressive step into gaming. You sound so excited for that. Just looking at your face, I'm just like, oh, Brandon's, yes,
Now,
you're like
take a lot to
I've been waiting for 10 years for the Mac Mini to be able to play games, and now we're like one or two generations away from just the ultimate Mac Mini gaming machine. That's perfect. Anyway, we can move on to that, and we can move into USB C. So Apple was forced, thanks to the EU, to incorporate USB C into their phones. So the 15 and the 15 Pro and the 15 Pro have USB C. So let's dive into what that means, because it doesn't mean the same thing for both phones. So um, the iPhone 15 Pro has USB C, and it's a USB 3 port. So it'll do up to 10 gigabits per second. Now, the rumor was that in order to get USB 3 speeds, you have to get a Apple cable or an Apple certified cable from a manufacturer that will make it to their spec and license their thing. But going to their website, and as well as watching the presentation, I didn't see anything that said that you had to get an Apple cable to get those speeds. The only thing mentioned on their website is that you just need a 10 gigabit capable USB C cable. So if you just have a regular USB C cable that can do up to 10 gigabits per second, it should work with the iPhone 15 Pro. So that's a good thing. It also still handles the 20-watt fast charging. If you want to consider 20 watts fast charging, it does that. With the iPhone 15, the non-Pro, um, it also does 20-watt charging, fast charging, just like the Pro, but it's USB 2. So now here's where I'll drop on you what I was mentioning before we start recording. So I'm going to drop this on you. So what they did was they kept the same USB controller that they had used with the A16 chip previously in the 14 Pro, and they're just recycling that and using that with the A16 now for the iPhone 15. So, like I said, their big thing was recycling, right? And environment. So they're recycling the iPhone 14 Pro as the iPhone 15 this year, and that includes everything down to the USB 2 controller. And so what they did was
That's
this: they just outfitted the what would have been a Lightning port with a USB C port.
hey, we're Apple. We're recycling. We're going to sell you the iPhone 16. It's pretty much the 15, but we're
Exactly.
going to recycle it
And
and
so
sell it to you.
yeah, so and
Please
so
buy
our
it to recycle.
exactly our anticipation is that the brand new iPhone 16 is actually just going to be a repackaged 15 Pro, and it will also have USB 3. So now this was a big deal. If you go online and if you watch YouTube, or just go to like the website like The Verge or whatever, and get your tech information. A lot of people were anticipating Apple to unveil USB C with the iPhones, and then when the rumors came out about needing MFI cables or Apple cables to get speeds and whatnot, this was a really hot topic on whether or not you could actually get full transfer speeds with the iPhones with their USB C and yeah. So, but this is a conversation that you and I had a week ago. Um,
Hmm.
this is my hot take and probably an unpopular opinion, but I think I'm going to make it a poll question, for any of you listening on Spotify, because for whatever reason people don't watch us on YouTube, but people do listen to us on Spotify for whatever. Um, my question out there is: do you really care about the transfer speed on the iPhone? Now, I get that if you're spending, $1,400 or $1,200 or $1,000 on a iPhone 15, Pro, that you'd want fast transfer speeds. You'd think that that would be just an expectation, is that if I'm spending, this amount of money on a phone, which is twice what I would normally spend on like a computer or something like that, I should get USB 3 speeds. My question is do you really care, for one? And two, do people use the iPhone to transfer data, and how often do you do that? So I have Apple products. I'm well in their ecosystem. I have a MacBook Air from 2020. I have a iPad Pro from 2020, and then I have my 13 Pro Max from 2021. These are 2 and 3 year old products that I have no intended intention of upgrading, because I think Apple right now is in a stagnation point, and I just don't have a compelling reason to upgrade. But I was thinking about it, and I was like, I've had my iPhone 13 Pro Max for 2 years. I've never plugged it into a computer.
Mm.
There's never been a need for me to transfer anything via cable. It's everything
How do
that
you
I have.
when
So
you
I back
transfer to a new phone? What do you do?
It's wireless.
You do a wireless transfer.
So everything is backed up to iCloud. So if I
Mm.
get a new phone, I just back up from iCloud. It
Download
backs
it.
up everything from my photos to my applications. It backs up everything and restores
Mm.
everything, and it does it wirelessly. And it's been like that for generations. And so I can go back to like a, my iPhone 7 Plus probably, and that was a thing. Um, so I don't think I've ever plugged in uh, my iPhone into a computer ever. And I understand that for people who want to back up their device onto like something local, a local computer, why you might do that. Um, but in this day and age, like I have everything backed up, and my photos are twice backed up because I also have, Google, and so my photos get automatically backed up to both my iCloud as well as my Google account too. Um, so I've never had to transfer stuff, and so I'm curious if that's a function people actually need. I don't know if there are content creators, which is still a term that I absolutely hate because it's stupid. But are there content creators that they film something on their iPhone and then want to immediately export it from that phone to something else? Why they would actually need that? These ports still do fast charging. I get why you'd want fast charging, right? If the iPhone 15 didn't offer fast charging, but the Pro did, I get why people would be upset about it. But they both do the same 20 watt fast charging. But the analogy I gave you is this really such a big deal that you need USB 3 uh, speeds off of it? Because I kind of feel
Mm.
like we're getting mad at the bar down the road getting rid of the horse trough, right?
Mm.
And being like
What?
that one person who's like, but what if I get a horse? Where is he gonna drink? Well, I'm getting a drink. Like the idea of plugging in the phone to a computer for really any reason at this point, for data transfer, like I get for the repair side, you plug it in to talk to a diagnostic machine, but you don't need USB 3 speeds for that.
Yeah. Aside from
So
recognizing the caveat that you uh, remarked on regarding the, you know, I spent this much money and it'd be
right,
nice to
yeah,
get the top of the line. Aside from that, I can't really weigh in being someone who, so I can't be your first survey response since I've never owned an Apple device. But I'm interested to hear what other people have to say. I would like to hear responses.
So yeah, I would be interested in that as well. Do people really care? So that's going to be the poll question. And thank you everyone who watched or listened.